Good afternoon, everybody. So thank you very much for joining us today on this webinar from the French Chamber of Japan. We are very happy today to have this webinar on the sustainability pilot solution by Maersk. And I will have the pleasure to introduce Mr. Edmund Yeo, who is implementation manager at Maersk. And so he will be able to tell you everything about this sustainability pilot solution. Just before that, just to inform you, so this webinar is recorded, and at the end of Edmund Yeo's presentation, you will have the occasion to ask some question. And so for that, please don't hesitate to send your question in the chat of this Zoom, so that I will be able after that to read them to our speaker. So I think that's about it. Thank you very much, and Edmund Yeo, I'll let you speak. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Let me just get my screen up and running. All right, good day. Welcome to the webinar today. So let me first start off by sharing a little bit about why we have picked this specific picture as the face of this webinar. So we usually have a few checklists or few checkpoints. So starting with, do we have a clear picture? Check. Is there a feeling of sustainability and that it looks green? Check. Are there windmills and solar panels? Check. And most importantly, is there a Maersk container in it? Check. However, for those of you who are just a little bit more sensitive, you might have noticed that the truck itself seems to look a little bit out of place. It is the only element in the picture that screams carbon emission. And that is exactly the problem which we will be trying to tackle today. Before I go on further, let me give a bit more information about myself. So I started my career in the shipping industry 9 years ago. And back then, we were still reeling from the aftermath of the Lehman Brothers crisis. And container shipping looks very different from the situation that we have today. I then moved to Japan about 5 years ago and joined Maersk and had the opportunity to gain a wide variety of experience, not only in container shipping, but also including launching new sites and services. But lastly, I have a very strong personal concern over climate change, and that partly helped to lead to today's topic. So coming back to the agenda for today, this is a day that I have been looking forward to for the last 2 years. Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. One good example is the first Apple iPhone. That changed the way we work. It changed the way we interact with each other. It changed the way we live our lives. And how about containerization? That changed many things as well. It changed the way goods were moved and handled. It changed where we source for raw materials and finished goods. And it helped to accelerate globalization. And as a global leader in container logistics, Maersk have been at the forefront of innovation over the years. So let me share a couple of them with you today. In 2011, we announced the Triple E's. The Maersk McKinney Mauler you see here is the first of a class of very large container carriers handling more than 18,000 TEUs. It heralded a new era in global container trade and offer to reduce carbon emissions per container by 50%. It was the largest container vessel back then. And in 2019, we announced the Eco Delivery. It was a revolutionary product and the first solution of its kind. For the first time ever, our customers, you, can choose to reduce carbon footprints for your ocean containers shipped with Maersk. And it works by, give me a second. something was wrong. Let me just come back to this again. Yes. So it works by replacing the heavy bunker fuel used in our ships with renewable biodiesel, which are compliant with the strictest international guidelines in terms of sustainability. And despite being available in the market for around 2 years now, it remains the only solution that allows you to reduce your carbon emissions by up to 85% on a well-to-whale basis. But as the global integrator of container logistics, we want to expand the solution offering to beyond our ocean services only. We know that almost 100% of the containers we moved on the ocean will involve the trucking move in one way or another. And we want to help you to significantly reduce carbon emissions for trucking as well. And that brings us back to approximately 2 years ago. We started the journey by looking at the technological landscape to identify suitable solutions for the Japan market, which can be sometimes quite unique compared to other countries. And the immediate realization for us is that electrification of container drayage is at least 5 to 10 years away, and that the investments required to replace the entire trucking fleet in Japan or any other countries will cost a lot of money. And hence, we started to explore the possibility of, could we combine the container truck move with something that we know could work, something which we have validated and is already being sold on the market. And that is our ocean eco delivery product. By combining the two, we hope that the end result will look something like this. But before we talk more about this new solution further, let us also try to understand the why part. Why are we doing this? Hopefully, most of us in this webinar today agree that climate change is a real threat. It is a real threat to our environment. It's a real threat to our food security. It is a real threat to the future of our children and grandchildren. We need to make substantial cuts in our carbon emissions if we want to remain hopeful that we can keep global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. In the recent COP26, or the UN Climate Change Conference held in Glasgow, it has become clear that we cannot rely entirely on governments to take the lead. And as the former US President Obama said, and I quote, "Most nations have failed to be as ambitious as they need to be. And that," I quote, "collectively and individually, we are still falling short." However, he also gave us hope. He gave a good example of how corporations can continue to take the lead on decarbonization even without strong government leadership. And you, the business leaders joining this webinar today, perfectly illustrates the point he made. So let's come back to Japan for a bit and try to take a deeper look at the numbers. Based on the official emission numbers in Japan, we know that approximately 6 to 7%, or around 73 million tons of CO2 emissions, can be attributed to trucking. And while we are starting to see emerging green technologies to reduce carbon emissions for the smaller trucks, the roadmap for large container drayage remains unclear. We need to have a solution to address carbon emission in container drayage, and we need it fast. Introducing Immersed drayage eco-delivery, the first scalable low carbon emission solution available in the Japan market for container drayage operations. It works by burning renewable diesel in the trucks that we use to deliver containers to your factories or warehouses. So very simple concept that we have here. But then you might ask, so where is the renewable diesel coming from? What is it? So renewable diesel is refined from used cooking oil and is ISCC certified. It is a drop-in fuel, and I personally think that this is where the first magic happens. Having a drop-in fuel means that we are able to utilize the existing truck fleet, enabling us to roll out the low carbon emission solution without waiting for the entire Japan truck fleet to be replaced. Another major benefit is that there's no modification to the trucks required. In fact, if you look at this slide, you will see that due to the cleaner burning characteristics of renewable diesel, we expect trucks to be able to run more cleanly and efficiently. Lastly, a very important point as well, it is not necessary to have high capital investment to set up the infrastructure to use this renewable diesel. We do not need to invest in expensive storage tanks or charging stations. In addition, we can also achieve a very high 80% reduction in carbon emissions on a well-to-whale basis and 100% reduction on a tank-to-whale basis. And of course, the option to also report as zero carbon emissions in Japan. There are no other solutions in Japan which can offer the same level of carbon emission reduction at the same cost level. So where do we get the renewable diesel from? So we source this fuel all the way from the Netherlands. It was originally, as we mentioned before, used cooking oil, but then processed at Rotterdam before being put on vessel and transported to Yokohama. We then utilize the fuel in our trucks to deliver containers to your factory or warehouse. As we mentioned earlier, it is a simple concept, but we spent over the last 2 years overcoming numerous regulatory challenges and operational issues to bring us to the current step. So instead of boring you with more details about the solution, so let me illustrate this with an example. Here we have Lily. Lily works for a large multinational corporation in Japan, and their customers are starting to demand for sustainable products transported by low carbon emission methods. As a response to the demands of their customers, the company have set up a strong sustainability goal and aims to reduce carbon emissions for both the manufacturing of the products, but also the way the products are transported. Unfortunately, it is a major challenge for Lily to find any solution in the Japan transportation market. And this is where we can help. After mapping out the transportation setup together with Lily, we found out that the company is moving around 1,000 containers per year with a round trip distance of approximately 100 kilometers, but a very ambitious goal of reducing CO2 emissions by 100%. But with those three numbers alone, we in Maersk will be able to calculate the CO2 emissions that we can achieve at 64.5 metric tons per year for this case, and the estimated cost at around 9,300 Japanese yen per container. And that sounds fantastic. But Lily found out that they have a limited budget for this year and would not be able to afford the total cost involved. So in Maersk, we have a very good understanding that every organization is probably at a slightly different stage of the sustainability journey. Some have a very ambitious goal, while others want to take things one step at a time. Some are less concerned about the cost, while others are more cost sensitive. And this is where the second magic happens. The Maersk Drayage Eco Delivery Service is fully scalable and customizable to fit the needs of our customers. For example, we can adjust the carbon emission reduction target from anywhere between 1% to 100%. And that is good news for Lily, because that means we could start working with Lily from 20% this year and then step it up to, let's say, 30% the following year. It is also possible for us to work based on a certain fixed budget to meet our customers' sustainability goals. And the beauty of this solution is that as the demand grows, we will then be able to steadily reduce the cost due to better economies of scale, so that with the same amount of budget, our customers, should be able to see the carbon emission savings increasing on a year-on-year basis. So what can Lily expect to receive? So of course, we have immediate and direct carbon emission savings. And I have to reiterate, this is not a carbon offsetting service where you plant some trees and hope that in 10 years' time, it will absorb the carbon emission. It is about taking concrete actions today to reduce carbon emissions. Lily can also expect to receive a quarterly statement from Maersk. A sample is available on the left side on the slide here, and it will clearly mention the exact CO2 saved, the number of containers moved, and the total distances traveled. In cases where there are multiple different corridors, the statement will also share the breakdown of the carbon emission savings at a route level. But lastly, in addition to the 80% carbon emission savings on a well-to-wheel basis, the renewable diesel will also allow Lily to significantly reduce smoke emissions by 33%, NOx emissions by 9%, and carbon monoxide emissions by 24%. All of which means that it will be better for the environment, not just from a CO2 emission perspective. So the example described earlier might seem to be a little oversimplistic, but in actual fact, it is indeed what the process would look like. We built the Immersed Drayage Eco Delivery such that it is easy for you to get started. For most companies, purchasing the Maersk Drayage Eco Delivery service would cost around 5% to 25% additional on top of the basic container drayage price. And that sounds like a lot in terms of percentages, but we often forget how much cargo each container can carry. And once we start to break it down, it will begin to look a lot more affordable. So remember the previous example where it cost Lily approximately 9,000 Japanese yen per container? Let us use a round number of 10,000 Japanese yen instead. So what does 10,000 Japanese yen per container means? To start things off, it translates to approximately 0.3 Japanese yen per t-shirt, 1 Japanese yen per pair of jeans, 1 Japanese yen per pair of shoes, and wait for it, 100 Japanese yen per washing machine. So as the third largest economy in the world, we believe that the Japan market is ready to absorb such cost increases. The Japan Prime Minister Kishida-san recently gave a speech, and I quote the translated version: "No one must be left behind as we confront the issue of climate change. Japan will dedicate all its strength to undertake actions and contribute to the future of humankind. Unquote. So Japan is ready. We just need to have a solution in place, and that is available now. So in terms of timeline and rollout, we'll be receiving the first batch of fuel next month, and is expecting our first deliveries to start from January 2022 at Yokohama. And once the service is stabilized, we will then hopefully target to roll out this service to Tokyo and Nagoya within 2022, and eventually get Osaka and Kobe up and running in 2023. But this is where we need your help. If you would like us to start offering this solution outside of Yokohama earlier, please let us know so that we know that there is a demand and that we can work on getting it available to you as soon as possible. So we are kind of almost reaching the end of this webinar. It's not a very long webinar, but I would just like to share the last magical points about this solution with you. So while preparing for this solution, for this service, we spent a long time pondering whether we should restrict this new solution for our customers who are using the Maersk Ocean service. We eventually came to the conclusion that this is a great solution for the environment. We need to scale it up as soon as possible by making sure that it is as easily accessible as possible so that all of us can help to contribute to reduce carbon emissions immediately without constraints. And yes, that means that the Immersed drayage eco-delivery service is available for non-Maersk ocean containers, and that you can enjoy the same carbon emission savings on the container drayage for Maersk ocean containers as well as for non-Maersk ocean containers. Let me finish this webinar with this quote from Sir David Attenborough. We are, after all, the greatest problem solvers to have ever existed on Earth. We now understand this problem. We know how to stop the number rising and put it in reverse. We must halt carbon emissions this decade. Personally, I find a lot of similarities in his message with what we are doing today. We now have a solution in place. We know how to reduce carbon emissions from container drayage operations in Japan. So let's get to work. Let's go green together. All right, thank you very much. So Maria, I think I will hand it back to you if we can move to the Q&A part of this webinar.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. Do we have any questions? Someone wants to, like, if you have any question, please don't hesitate to put it in the chat. Maybe while you start, I can ask, my first question would be like, because you mentioned that they is certified by ISCC. So what is ISCC actually?
Yep. Thanks for the question. So ISCC refers to the International Sustainability and Carbon Certification. So it is an international certification system covering all kinds of bio-based feedstock and renewables catering to energy, food, feed, and chemical sectors. So in short, it means that our renewable diesel complies with international standards and that it comes from sustainable sources.
Okay.
I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Just another. So yeah, thank you very much for all the explanation. Was just wondering. So does your presentation mean that, does it mean that all the containers now will be delivered with this renewable diesel energy?
great question. So unfortunately, not really at this point. So we cannot guarantee that all the containers will be delivered with trucks running on the renewable diesel. And some of it is because of practical reasons and of course cost. So for now, the way that we are arranging this service is some of the containers might still be delivered on trucks which are not running on the renewable diesel. But let me also mention that, so what we can assure to our customers is that we have a very robust process to ensure that the fuel that our customers purchase are consumed in very specific trucks, which we will then, of course, try our best to deploy for our customers utilizing this service. And in fact, we have chartered 4 trucks specifically related to this service as well. We are also, of course, looking into the future. We are looking at options to set up more premium products to be able to guarantee our customers that 100% of their containers are delivered by trucks running 100% of renewable diesel. So as a starting point, because scale is a little bit smaller, we cannot guarantee that 100% of the containers will be delivered by trucks running on renewable diesel.
I see. Yeah. Just for the companies who would contact you, like, so I've seen your chart with all the CO2 emissions. So how do they know how to calculate the CO2 emission that it will reduce or that is reduced?
Yeah. So in Japan, we want to avoid any discrepancies or any claims. So what happens is we have utilized all the metrics that are published by the Japanese authorities. And that comes down to this specific truck model that we have. And the average fuel consumption that is published, once again, by the Japanese authorities. And for this particular case, the model that we are looking at is the Isuzu Giga truck. And that comes up to 4 kilometers per liter. And also, the Japanese government also published the CO2 emission per liter of normal diesel at 2.58 kg. So with those numbers, we will then be able to calculate what would be the CO2 emission savings. But also coming back again with this but, for those who are familiar with the container drayage industry, 4 kilometers per liter would seem unrealistic. And we also realize it. So the actual fuel consumption for most of the trucks hauling the containers would be around 2 kilometers per liter, or sometimes even lower. And the reason for that is because the actual fuel consumption will be greatly affected by many factors, such as the total idling time of the truck due to congestions, whether the truck is using the highway or just going through the normal roads with lots of traffic lights, the weight of the container, etc. So in order to avoid any dispute on the CO2 emission savings, we have calculated these numbers based on the most conservative way, which is assuming that there's no containers at the back of the truck, so that we know that at the very minimum level, this will be the CO2 that we can save. So I hope that helps to answer the question.
I understand. Maybe you mentioned it, but like if the company is already working with another trucking company, can they still use this service?
Yes. So another great question. So the general answer is no. So Maersk, we are a global integrator of container logistics. We are a logistics service provider and not an oil trader, right? So we do not sell the fuel to, let's say, your trucking company that you're using. But we have already come across several cases where we could potentially still serve as a subcontractor to your existing trucking company So details still need to be discussed separately, but there could be possibility for us to still work together.
And well, so I've seen that they would receive like a CEO statement to that
yes
working. Yeah. Well, would they receive some other document, or maybe I was thinking maybe like a tagline to say delivered by the sustainability pilot solution, or what, I don't know, anything like they could use and enhance the point.
Yep. So if required, yes, we can disclose what we call the proof of sustainability. So that is a certificate which is audited by third parties that we receive from our fuel supplier. And in that document, we would then be able to tell specifically what is the percentage CO2 savings on a well-to-wheel basis for that particular shipment. At the same time, we know that some of our customers have their internal requirements. They might require some customized reporting, like Maria, what you mentioned earlier. So if there are some additional requirements, those can also be addressed, but they might come at some additional cost. So it really depends on what is the requirement from our customers. Yeah.
Okay, I understand. And can they get a carbon tax rebate?
Yes, fantastic question. So for those who are familiar, this service, so low carbon emission savings tracking service, is actually in fact quite popular in some countries, specifically in the European Union. And the main reason for that is because they do have a very strong carbon tax trading system where they can indeed get carbon tax rebates. Unfortunately, the Japan authorities have not yet set up such a scheme, and hence it's not possible to get any rebates locally. But at the same time, looking at such a possibility, it will be coming soon. Yeah.
I don't know if it's me or it just cut a little bit. So maybe if you want, maybe it's only on my side, but maybe if you want just to repeat what you just said so that it's clear.
Sure. So I can do that. So I said that the Japan authorities have not set up the scheme to allow carbon tax rebates. So it is not possible to get rebates locally, but we do understand that the Japanese government is looking at the possibility of such a system in the coming years. So keeping fingers crossed that it will be coming soon.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you well. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Good. Because I think the image is a little bit. Yeah. So maybe one. If nobody has any question, please don't hesitate to send your question on the discussion on the chat down if you have any. Otherwise, maybe I would just have one last question. Is there any minimum contractual period for the company contacting you for that?
Yep, indeed, there is. So we have a minimum contractual period of around 3 months, and that has to be paid in advance. So the normal drayage fees can be paid on a per use basis, and that is kind of the normal market practice. And the minimum contract period is 3 months because we believe that this is the minimum duration that we can have a material impact on the environment while ensuring that our customers have sufficient time to evaluate the service level as well. So yeah, so to keep it short, yes, we need it to be minimum contractual period of 3 months. Yeah, so I hope that helps to answer the question.
Okay, thank you very much. I think on my side, that's gonna be all I have. Does anybody want to ask any question? Okay. So maybe, is there anything else you think you would like to add, Edmund?
No, yes, thank you, Maria. So from my side, if there are no other questions, maybe we can close the session. What do you think? Is it okay that I close?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yes. So with that, we would like to first share our appreciation to the French Chamber of Commerce for hosting this webinar here today, and of course the people you for participating and engaging us here with some of your questions. But if you have more questions, please always feel free to reach out to myself to learn more about this service, either through my email address shown on the screen here, or connect with me on my LinkedIn profile. And of course, you can also reach out to us through our website at immersed.com. I think that's all from my side, Maria.
Yeah, thank you very much. And of course, if you forgot the details, you can also contact me at the French Chamber, Mario Zaki, and I will make sure to connect again to Edmund. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much, Edmund. It was very interesting. I hope it's going to work very well, because I think it's very good we all need this type of project to grow bigger and bigger. So thank you very much. And yeah, we'll keep in touch, and we'll make sure to continue the next ones. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, guys.